Baby, it's time to talk some shit on the Powell movement.
Welcome to the Powell movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and this week I talked to a legendary athlete who was the face of rollerblading in the 1990s and the most important skater of all time. I'm talking about the Airman, Chris Edwards. And while it's easy to forget that rollerblading was once bigger than scootering, skateboarding, and BMX combined, that was the case in the mid-90s. And the crown jewel of the sport was Chris. While he was crushing it in his professional life, his personal life was a mix of religion, vice, divorce, children, and then more children. Chris has lived and still lives an absolutely crazy life. While you can't tell from how the podcast was edited, this recording was a total shit show, but it came out awesome. Before we talk to the Airman, I need to ask you to please follow me on Instagram at The Powell Movement, share my posts on Facebook, and review me on whatever platform you listen to me on. If you want to connect with me, my email is mike@thepowellmovement.com. I will get back to you. And I also need to thank my sponsors who make this show happen. They are Evo, Rescue Water, the 10 Barrel Brewery, and Unofficial Networks. Now, let's talk to Chris Edwards.
We're at Dairy Queen, bro. It's like one of the first nice warm days of the year here. And it is packed.
So you have the whole crew with you?
We got the crew that we travel deep constantly with. It's my wife and I, and we have a son, Canyon James. And then she has her daughter, Ayla, and her son, Cohen. So that's our immediate knit. And then I still have Dakota and Melora, Baxter, Sidian, and Elijah. We managed to get them all together one time for a big photo, but there'll be 8 of us.
If you had the whole crew together right now, you'd be spending like $150 at Dairy Queen.
Bro, you don't even understand. Like, I have to save up to bring them together. When we meet up, we'd go to IHOP. Bro, it's like 200 and some bucks.
Man, that is crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And home base for you right now is at Pittsburgh?
Yeah, we're in Pittsburgh.
At this point, I haven't talked to you in probably a decade.
Yeah.
When we did talk, it was all about rollerblading because I'd see you on the road at different events. And nowadays, what's an average day in the life of Chris Edwards?
Waking up early, helping getting some kids off to school, and then doing a daily hustle. I started a construction company. So I'm up running my guys and buying products and building things and setting up meetings. My days are mad. They go late.
I can imagine. I mean, with all those kids, when you get home from work, there is no break. It's almost like more work at home.
No, it's Groundhog's Day. Straight up.
Well, during the podcast, I want to walk through your life and times. And you didn't start as Chris Edwards. You started as Chris Denton Hodges.
Well, I mean, I guess to be technical, that would be, I started out as Chris Hodge. Then I became Chris Denton Hodge. Then I became Chris Edwards.
We'll talk about the name changes as it goes, but born in New Mexico, is that right?
No, I was born in Escondido, California, Palomar Hospital.
For some reason, I have Los Alamos on my notes, and I don't know why.
Because I did spend a few years in Los Alamos.
So you started in Escondido, went to Los Alamos, and then came back?
To Escondido.
Yeah. Your dad was a pastor growing up?
He was an evangelist. From what I remember, we would travel around in a trailer and go church to church. And then he had a church in Southern California for a while that he was part of that I could remember. And then I think he was like assistant pastor or something in California after going from being an evangelist. And then he got his own church in Los Alamos. So then we moved to Los Alamos when I was probably 8. We were there for only a handful of years, and then we ended up back in Escondido. So I'm pretty much born and raised Escondido.
Was there any money in the whole God thing? In the way that you were brought up, was there money in your childhood? And if there was, it would probably be from God if your dad's working in the faith industry.
Right, but it wasn't. We never really had much. He was a Baptist and leaned more towards the Southern Baptist. So, my hair was always very proper above my ears, and I was not enabled to go watch Bambi because if I did, then someone might think that my dad was enabling secular behavior. It was a pretty stout and very religious experience growing up.
So you were in church every Sunday and probably more than that?
Bro, Sundays, Wednesdays, Tuesdays.
Did you hate it or did you just learn to deal with it?
The weird thing is by the time I think that any kind of rebellious nature would have really spawned from it, my dad had stopped pastoring and then turned a new leaf, to be polite.
Was the new leaf something that was welcomed by the family?
Probably wouldn't be welcomed by most families.
Okay, so it made life tough for you as a kid?
Oh, big time. Yeah. I went from hardcore Southern Baptist style, like fear God, believe in God, or you're going to hell and fire and brimstone, to watching six packs, alcohol bottles, and all kinds of other fun paraphernalia start trickling into my home. I got to see the extremes of black and white pretty fast by the time I was 12. Both sides, bro. Like the brightest and the darkest.
And does that fuck with you as a kid?
I've always had this internal belief that like you can't really have excuses, but it definitely, as I look back, there's a lot of reasoning behind some of my really poor decisions I've made in my life.
Knowing you, and especially in front of a crowd, that boisterous personality, and your dad being an evangelist, I'm sure some of that carries over to you being great in front of people and getting them fired up.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of the positive things. At this point in my life, I have a great relationship with my father. So even though he sent us down a path of hell, which it felt like, for quite some time through my childhood and really through my entire rollerblading career, I was dealing with it.
So that's got to be a tough thing for a kid to grow up with, because you've got a whole bunch of problems at home. And what are you doing to escape those problems? Because when you're in Escondido, I'm sure you try to get out of the house as much as possible so you don't have to deal with the bullshit.
That's where rollerblading took over my life. When we moved back to California from Los Alamos, we moved next door to a dude, Martin Wazowski, who owned North County Bicycles. And he was very generous to my little brother and I, and he ended up letting me kind of work in his bike shop. At this point, hindsight's 2020, so I'm sure that he noticed and realized there was some issues happening at my home. So he kind of big brothered us. Him and Kenny Clark. Kenny Clark worked at North County Bicycles as well. Kenny Clark's where we built the Fern Ramp that is kind of infamous with the spawning of the vert culture.
Yeah. So you work at this shop and they get samples of rollerblades in?
Well, what was crazy was he didn't pay me with cash, because I'm only like 12 years old. So clean the bathrooms, go set bikes up, wipe bikes down, that kind of crap,
Yep.
And then he would pay me like 5-6 points an hour, right? So the points equivalated to dollars, but they could only be spent at his store. That was kind of below the child labor laws.
Yeah, and he was throwing you a bone by getting you out of your house and getting you around cool shit.
He was. Yeah, so at first I was buying bikes, and I tried to BMX race for a minute, and then did a little bit of freestyle bicycling, but then he got some rollerblades in. And when we lived in New Mexico, my dad's an avid skier and a pretty darn good one. So he had us moving down the mountains. So we really got a good ski background with my dad in Los Alamos. And in Los Alamos, there's a private hill there that is just absolutely incredible. So we'd go all the time. We had season passes. So I fell in love with skiing, and then we moved back to Escondido. And just as I'm falling in love with skiing, it's getting ripped away from me. I'm back into the desert.
Were you pissed to move back? Did you want to stay in New Mexico?
No, but I missed the skiing.
Okay.
At that point, that was probably my most favorite activity. I was loving to jump off cliffs and hit all the jumps, and, I was into that. So the bike shop, there's a dude with ski poles, and it triggered instantly like, oh, dang, that's kind of cool. So I earned my pair of skates. I think I had the Zetra 606s were out with a metal frame. I got them and started charging.
And was it playing hockey charging? What were you doing?
No, bro. It was aggressive, just charge. That became my angst outlet. And I just started jumping off anything and everything I could see that would just fly around town. And at that point, I was literally one of the first people in Escondido to even have a pair of people who tripped out on me a lot.
Were you the guy who was skating everywhere across town? Because back in the 80s, 90s, that was transportation too.
Yeah, dude. I flew around town, bro. I got my way to school, and I'd fly down to a buddy's house, a little mini ramp. I'd ride that. Fly to my other buddies. We had like a 8-foot divert with bikers, So I was riding ramps. I was instantly engulfed in the action sports culture. I mean, I'm in Southern California. Can't help but be, surfing, bodyboarding, skateboarding, bicycle. I mean, that's Southern Cal.
That's the hub.
Yeah. So I couldn't help but grow up around it and be surrounded by it. And of course, watching videos of Christian Soy, man, watching him go so high, dude, was my motivation, really, I just happened to fall in love with rollerblading, and that became my outlet. And I think from my ski background, I fell in love with it.
Getting into skating, I mean, you get noticed pretty quickly because it seems like you're getting your first pair of skates in like 86 and you're 12 years old, 13 years old. But soon after that, you meet up with Chris Morris and Pat Parnell, who's part of the first Team Rollerblade, and they recruit you to be part of Team Rollerblade.
Chris Morris was the rep in town, right? So Martin obviously knew Chris because that's how he got the skates. So then it was like coming around the summer of 87, I've been, screaming around town for a year and started jumping off some crazy stuff. And, I'd always come flying into the parking lot and launch this little 4-foot gap, like wall down into the parking lot and skid out and go into work. And so Kenny Clark had a quarter pipe. So, I started riding ramps and doing different stuff. I wasn't over the top crazy, but still kind of over the top crazy for the time. So he told Chris, "Hey, you got to check this kid out." And Martin had called me into work and said, "Hey, I got a special thing for you today. You got to go skate and show this dude what you do. And that's your job today." I'm like, "Okay, great." So I remember Pat Parnell was sick as a dog, so he didn't really skate. He just hung out in the van. I think he was hungover from a good night. Morris went and rode with me. So I took him all around Escondido High, and there's a bunch of crazy gaps there. Morris, at that point, he showed me the stair ride, which I chased right down behind. I was like, yeah, that is pretty slick. So we did a stair ride down the thing, and then I took him over a couple of obstacles that I was into. Sorry.
That's okay.
I'm like being distracted.
It's all good, man. We can work with it. I edit the shit out of it.
You're going to have to, because I'm about to get me a blizzard.
Okay.
I was taking Morris around Escondido High, and then I took this like crazy gap, and he stopped at the top and said, "Whoa, no." It was a pretty nasty gap, and Morris just stopped. He's like, "Dude, you're crazy." And he put me on there was like a junior team rollerblade, and I did some photo shoots. But then next thing I know, I'm wearing spandex. I'm on the cover of the Blade Runner box. And I was like, man, this is not like what I kind of signed up for. At the time, whatever. It was cool to make some money, but then I realized, man, I don't think that this is really the thing for me.
They were skate dancers at that point.
Yeah, dude, that whole beginning push. You had Doug Boyce. Doug Boyce was, and Pat Parnell and Morris were repping more of the extreme side, but the big push was recreational racing and the dance team. That was the thing. So I don't know, a couple of years have passed, and then things didn't really start heating up with rollerblade. I signed with them on the junior team in 87, and then I did a couple of things with them. Then I think we ended up doing Mickey Mouse show, which was crazy.
On the Mickey Mouse Club, right?
Yeah, the Mickey Mouse Club. Yeah, right.
Who was on the Mickey Mouse Club at that point? Anyone huge?
I forget who we did it with, man. I'd just be making something up to tell you.
I'll make it up. It's Britney and Justin Timberlake, and it was crazy.
That's what I was going to say, but, you feel funny trying to name drop. But I guess that's who was on it. It was, right?
I'm not 100% sure.
I'm not 100% sure either.
You did Mickey Mouse Club. Were you doing skate dance stuff? Did they force you to do shit that you didn't want to do?
They never forced me.
They paid you to do shit you didn't want to do.
But they paid me to do things I didn't want to do. But then I quickly maneuvered my way out of such a thing. But then, the Mickey Mouse Club, they brought in a ramp. They're like, okay, we're going to use you, and you get to come in and do a trick on the ramp. And then I was like, all right, that's cool. And then I got to sing the Mickey Mouse song, bro. And I got to say, why? Because we like you. That's the kind of stuff you get to tell your kids. That's cool. That's fun.
You've got a lot of cool things that your kids will all learn about. I'll say you're partially a kid yourself in some of the things that you've done your whole life. And that's the beauty of Chris Edwards, is the passion and the fun and the playfulness that you brought, and the hammers as well.
Yeah.
When you get with Team Rollerblade as a junior, do you have family involved at all in contracts or anything you're signing? Or are you your own man then?
I'm kind of my own man then because my dad wasn't really all with it. You know, I was still escaping. So I think that they were trying, but they were not really there, unfortunately.
And was there a lot of travel involved?
Not at first. Dude, I'm still a kid, so I'm under the age of 18 at this point. That would have been my 8th grade year. My 9th grade year was kind of silent. I was still skating and, you know, riding with my friends who had bikes and skateboards and that kind of thing, you know, and it was a little bit quiet in my 9th grade year, which would have been, 89. And then it was like the beginning of the 90s when things started really picking up. Then Rollerblade put together the ultimate circus show for promotions, which was then they started carrying around that 10-foot vert and the dancers would dance below us and we would get to do our thing above them.
And people's minds are blown by that, I'm sure.
Yeah. Then, like, 10th grade year, like, I dropped out of school in the middle of my 10th grade year because everything just started to come faster than you could shake a stick at. From that point on, it all just became one big blur. And sitting here now was like a lifetime ago.
Yeah, I mean, when you drop out of high school, does everyone in high school know who you are at that point? Is Chris Edwards starting to get the promotion where people are starting to figure it out?
No, not until, no, not quite yet, because it was still kind of like at that point I was, I started to do some commercial work with Rollerblade, and then we did Prayer of The Rollerboys with Corey Haim.
You ever party with Corey Haim?
Corey Haim was the first. Well, hang on, man. I gotta jump out of the car for a second.
Okay.
I got the 11-year-old and the impressionable 13-year-old in the vehicle. Let me get out of there.
Okay, that sounds good.
Corey Haim was the first person who ever offered me a joint. I was only like 15 at that point. I was 90 around then when we did that because they still had like some other people do some stunts that I wasn't allowed to do because I wasn't emancipated. I was still under the age of 18. So there were some stunts I wasn't allowed to do. But then they gave me a call for the opening scene through one of the reservoirs in California, that opening scene.
Yep.
They gave me a call for that because then they're like, oh, I guess we're going to cheat. He's not emancipated, but we need him to do a flip and we need him to do a couple of tricks. So all of a sudden I got called in for that stunt work because it was, I don't know how they worked their way around that, but I got called in for that. And then, I was in the movie and did, with a roller boy. I think I'm on the cover of the video sleeve too, which is funny.
And does any of this get to your head? Because you're such a young kid. And do you get cocky at all, or are you just cool Chris?
Well, I think every kid's cocky. You're not a kid if you're not cocky and know everything, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So I guess there was that part of me. But I still was just, I was just on a whirlwind. I was having a blast. So, I was really starting to enjoy everything that was going on.
And how much are you making when I wasn't going to bring up money at this point, but I will because I love talking about money. First and foremost, did you ever have an agent or did you do it all yourself?
I did have an agent during the beginning when it was all kind of Hollywood years. There's kind of like the segments of my rollerblading experience was, a little bit of promotion with Rollerblade and then a handful of Hollywood years and then the contest came about. So that's kind of like the transition that I took. We're like way pre-contest.
You need the agent for the movies to get you in there. But then later on in your career, where it's just dealing with inline skate brands in general, you can do that by yourself.
Yeah, well, I ended up doing it by myself. So I don't know if it was necessarily the smartest move I ever made, but that's what I did.
I think it's debatable. I mean, if you know what your value is and you're willing to stick to your guns, that's one thing. But if you're not able to be rock solid in the meeting and say, I deserve this and you have to pay me this, and when you're younger and you don't have that much experience with it, it's hard to stand up for yourself like that, then maybe it's good to have an agent who is kind of impartial and can be a dick right back to the brands because it's hard for you as an athlete in a negotiation to be like, fuck you, I am worth way more than that, because you have to kind of be professional.
I think at that point, though, in my life, God had hooked me up with, there's Angie Walton fighting like crazy for me, Pat Parnell fighting like crazy for me. They were major voices in the negotiations at a rollerblade table,
Yeah, and so you're with Rollerblade from like 87 to 2007.
Yeah.
And I'm sure in the early days, the dollars are way bigger than they are in the later days, but that's just the cycle of how the sport has gone. You know, in your biggest year with the Rollerblade brand, how much can you make as an athlete just from Rollerblade?
During my peak?
Yeah, when they were printing money, they couldn't make enough skates.
What's up, Canyon? What you got? Oh, dude, the ice cream with sprinkles is unbelievable. I was making more dollars than Canyon's ice cream has sprinkles.
It has like 100,000 sprinkles on that ice cream?
Yeah, and then some.
So life was good to you with Rollerblade?
I was making really good money between all the endorsements and royalties coming in from Mighty Ducks 2 and 3 and from Airborne, and then just the flat out pays from those. And yeah, my wife says, let's not talk about that because she wants to cry because we got married where we both walked away from our jobs. I got a tux at the thrift store and she borrowed $100 from her friend for her wedding dress. I got $5 for some roses and made near with some ribbon that we found in the house. That's how we started our marriage. So we just wanted to go from poor to riches.
So it's a different time than 95.
It's a way different time. I was making really good money. At the time, everything felt like it was going to the sport was really going somewhere and that we were making a difference around the globe and there was opportunities for everyone to make money. I think there was a lot of us making pretty decent money. I never sat with anyone and was like, yo, Arlo, how much money you making, bro? I never was nosy like that, but I know that I was making decent money.
Because it's 1995. The numbers for rollerblading are absolutely staggering.
Yeah.
There's an estimated 20 million people skating. A couple million of those 20 are aggressive skating. And you are on the top of the food chain. I mean, at this point, to brands like ESPN, your name is more important than Tony Hawk at that point, which is crazy to think where we are now. But back then, right, the X Games hadn't started. Blading was getting huge, and you were the king of the sport.
Yeah, I guess I was labeled that way, and it was crazy at that point.
But it wasn't just that you were labeled that way. It was the way that you skated that blew everyone's mind. I mean, just some of the stunts and the hammers that you drop, other people don't even want to think about. But what I need to think about right now are my sponsors. And the first one is Evo. And they are hands down the best retail location in the country for ski, snowboard, skate, bike, clothing, outerwear, and they have everything you could possibly want for your adventure. I have personally shopped there since they opened because no one comes close to the service they offer and the vibe they create. Now that it's bike season, if you're in Denver, Seattle, or Portland, Evo is your one-stop shop for the best bike brands, and their shop knows what they're doing because they live it. If you can't make it to a store, Evo.com has all the brands, all the products, and a low price guarantee, free shipping on orders over $50, and a no-hassle return policy. For listening to the show, they're going to give you an additional 10% off. What you need to do is input the code capital TPM, the number 10 with no spaces at checkout, and you'll get 10% off that order. My next sponsor is Rescue Water, and they are proactive recovery and should be your choice for hydration. Now that the weather is turning, hydration is more important than ever. And Rescue Water has looked into the science of hydration and have created something that will replace your electrolytes better than a traditional sports drink. Think of it like this. Energy drinks are better than coffee for a pick-me-up, like Rescue Water is better than a sports drink for hydration. And with Rescue Water, better is something you can feel. Anytime you sweat, replace it with Rescue Water. And if you're a night owl like me, drink a cold Rescue Water before bed after big nights out, and there'll be no more Saturday morning headaches. It's amazing how well it works for me, and you can make it work for you by heading over to rescuewater.com and saving 20% on a 12-pack case by entering the code RESQ Water TPM. That's all one word. Put that in at checkout. And if you don't do it that way, Rescue Water is also available on Amazon and Amazon Prime. My final sponsor brews beer, drinks beer, and has fun doing it, period. They're the 10 Barrel Brewery based out of Bend, Oregon, and they live and breathe the snow and bike culture and support it with events and beer. They also pride themselves in drinking beer outside, and it's amazing how a cold 10 Barrel and Mother Nature can recharge you. Make it a part of your week by picking up some 10 Barrel, calling some friends, and drinking beer outside with them. If that's not your thing, maybe food is. And if you happen to be in Bend, Portland, Boise, Denver, or San Diego, check out one of the 10 Barrel pubs for some great food and our favorite beers. I personally could live off the garlic bread bites and cheese dip. Support the beer that supports action sports, the 10 Barrel Brewery. Find out more about the beer, the events, and pubs over at 10barrel.com. So those are my sponsors. Now it's time to get back into your life. And in terms of product, you're one of the guys that tinkered with products. Small wheels can be attributed to you, I would say, because you were messing with skateboard wheels at some point, right?
Yeah, but I mean, that's a collaboration, with Jess Darrenforth and Angie and Parnell and Doug Boyce. Like, those were a lot of my influence there. They were the silent background pushing me like, oh man, grab that, do that, tweak this, tweak that.
You're on Team Rollerblade and you are 15 years old. Everybody else that you're with is 21.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's kind of Jess Darrenforth, Doug Boyce, Parnell, AJ Jackson, like everyone they would constantly push me. I think Doug Boyce and Pat Parnell really bugged out on me. I think they pushed me the most. They got it, They knew what we were going after. And then I think that Angie and Jess got involved right around the same time.
People are going to offer you money to do some crazy things because they know you're capable of it and they want to get a shot for whatever they need. And what is the most dangerous thing that you've done in your career for money?
One of the craziest things that really got me nervous and really half petrified was probably the launch in Airborne into the back of that flatbed tow truck, bro. That was so high. The surroundings of it, what you can't really see is that once I hit the bed, if my momentum went straight with that amount of speed and velocity, I could have flipped over that rail and dropped 40 feet to the ground. There was some pretty gnarly things about that. And I'm up on the level up above that. And in the movie, it looks like I ran up the car, right? Which I did and probably could have if I had to, but to be safe, we actually were up on that level and built a flat plateau to skate across and sprint into it so I could clear everything and get down to where I needed to get down. The first time, bro, I think I almost overshot it because I was so hyped and petrified that I just sprinted like a madman and then almost overshot everything. It just clipped the bottom. I stuck a couple, but then I think they ended up just using the one that was a little more realistic. I was like, just keep it realistic because that's probably what would have happened.
Yeah.
I probably would have taken it, slid out on my butt, but I slid out so perfectly and landed right back on my feet and sprinted away that I was like, that's probably the most realistic shot. Use that one.
And they listened to you for the artistic direction when it came to skating?
Yeah, they respected it enough, I don't know that I always got my way, but, whatever. My opinion mattered.
So do you have a big house, nice car, and living a baller lifestyle? Because you're probably about to get into your early 20s-ish, and you're making a shit ton of money. I would think life's really fun.
Life's pretty good, except for I got married way too young. So then this is where I think that as equally as successful as I was in my rollerblading career, I was equally unsuccessful in my personal life.
What age are you when you get married?
18.
Jesus Christ, man. So you have the world at your fingertips, every girl in the world wanting to throw themselves at you, and you get married at 18?
Isn't that what you're supposed to do?
I guess if you have a pastor father or an evangelist father.
Yeah, I think so. I think that, it took me a long time to kind of come to my own belief system. At first, when I'm in my 18, 19, 20, I was a youth pastor. I overly dove back into the religion because I was like, wait a second, I've seen both sides now, and as rough and tough and I can't go watch Bambi as I was, it sure is a hell of a lot better than watching you get, sloshed, hammered, and high and all weird. So I drove back in, I guess, to find my own belief system in God.
So was there a period where you were diving headfirst into drugs and alcohol, not ruining your career, but experimenting with those things, and then you go back?
No, not till I was much older. I was pretty straight edge for quite some time. The first X Games is when I first started doing a little bit of experimenting, smoked some herb. Dayton Coopersmith brought me some weed.
So you see everybody partying, you decide to go back and be a youth pastor. It sounds like you're really confused then because you get married, you go back into being a youth pastor, but your passion in life and what everybody in your world is doing is totally different than the things you're doing at home, which is kind of strange.
Yeah, I think so. I just stayed with church.
Were you outwardly preachy?
Yeah, I believe in Jesus. I still do. I wasn't afraid to let people know. I mean, you see like all of the original NIST and everything. I was always praying and giving my shout outs to God. I always gave him the glory and the credit for any of my abilities that I had acquired. I think that I was convinced that he had his angels around me and made me fearless. And then I knew like one of my favorite scriptures, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And I believed that with all of my heart, that I could do anything if I just asked and prayed and believed.
How long does this second phase of God last for you? Till the first X Games?
Yeah, I think that was the first time I got drunk because I could, I guess. I think I started to do a little bit of experimenting at that point in my career.
You're married a few years at this point. I don't know if you have any children at the time, but I heard a rumor, and I will say total rumor, that I figure I will ask you about. I heard some story years back that you were at an X Games and you knocked yourself out and you're on the flat bottom of the ramp.
Yeah.
And a girl comes to your side and she comforts you, who is not your wife. And your wife at the time sees this on national television, and that creates major problems for you. Is that true?
That is true, except for the fact that the major problems had already been there. And that was like my finish point. I was ready for a dissolve, and I youthfully probably did it out of order. But that wasn't why I got divorced. Yes, she saw her, and yes, of course, she called me out, and I was kind of glad about it. It was my cowardly way out, I suppose. If I could do it differently, I'd do it differently. But, I was 20 years old at the time. We just had our son, Elijah. All right. Hold on just a second. We're moving again.
You should have got him one. You should have got him
one. What's going on now? Now we're
one of these.
3-year-olds, bro. They're fuck wild, man. Do you have any kids, bro?
I've got one, and he's 8.
Okay. So you remember, like, the first few years. When they lose it, bro, they lose it. And then you just find yourself, like, doing things you probably shouldn't be doing, like giving in to a bunch of bullshit.
Well, you have so many. I only have one, so it's really easy to manage. You would laugh if you saw how easy it was.
Yeah, I don't know. I've unfortunately have a lot of children that I didn't get to raise and grow up with. I know them, they know of me, and our relationship's a work in progress. But it's been a whirlwind with me. Like I said, as aggressively as I skated, as aggressive as my personal life was, trying to figure it all out.
You had everything right on one end of your life and
everything's so wrong on the other, man.
Yeah.
That's not my excuse, but it's my understanding, I guess, at this point of it, how much a dogmatic upbringing can influence your life and actually kind of jack it up.
Yeah. I mean, all the things that happen to us when we're kids, I always talk about money on this show. And it's because my dad lost all his money when I was a kid and it fucked me up. But it took me till I was like 40 to figure it out. And all of the stuff that you had to go through definitely is going to impact you through everything you go through. And you don't even realize it until now.
Yeah. I think that.
Then you can connect all the dots and be like, oh, yeah, he did that, and that. And that's really bothered me. And that's why I did these things.
Yeah, I mean, I think I understand where a lot of my, you make your mistakes, though. And then, what do? You either roll over and die or try again. And, I'm kind of a crazy dude. And I'll just keep on trying. Unless you kill me, I'm going to keep trying.
Yeah, and I would say you tried a lot of different things in blading.
I did.
You can think about the investments that you made. And to me, as if you're looking at it from a non-business perspective, what you did was take your personal money and you tried to put a sport on your back and help build it by creating skaters one by one, by traveling everywhere. And you created a brand, you created a tour. I think Birth is the first big project you have. And it was all for the love. And maybe there wasn't a big return on investment for you other than the emotional connection you got. But there wasn't the financial return that you needed to keep these things going.
Well, yeah, I bankrupt myself. Trying.
You start with Birth. That's a clothing company. It's one of the first core rollerblading brands. You're the most core rollerblader out there, and you start this company. How long are you able to keep it going?
It kind of went on and off through the years. I mean, I kept it going until the end of the Diversity Tour. So it would have been, 2000 when I folded up.
You bought RVs. I'm sure you bought ramps. What kind of personal commitment are you making to be able to build rollerblading?
Dude, I was feeding like 10 mouths every single week on that thing too, you know? The little bit of money I was able to raise from the industry, like kind of matched the amount of money I put in, which was a lot. 6 figures easily. There's a lot of people to feed, a lot of people to house, a lot of people to drive around, and it was big.
Looking back on it now, and I'm sure there's things that you would do differently in your career, I'm thinking you'd still do something similar. You just have the business end dialed in so you could make some money.
Yeah, most likely. I still would have the same passion, you know? This whole thing kind of just like fell upon me, you know? I think it was just like it was God's. I still believe, you know, God was in control. So it was just kind of my destiny in a sense. Like, and I just had to follow my heart, which I did. And I think, you know, every move that I made, I think I was following my heart and what I felt was the right thing to do at the time.
You know, you dropped out of high school in 10th grade. You were a professional athlete. There's nothing wrong with what you did. But maybe some of the business choices you made later could be attributed to you maybe not having as much time in school. I don't know. I'm just guessing.
Yeah, I definitely didn't have much of an education at all when it came to business outside of what I was kind of learning. I still am just trying to figure it out, bro.
Now, you're doing much better with your construction company?
Yeah, so far. I'm definitely doing better than I was. I definitely have a broader understanding. When you watch a lot of money come and go, then you throw your hands in the air and give up or you try again and try and not make the same mistakes. But construction, which is a whole new field, so I'm just learning and making horrible mistakes that, you know, I'm surviving from because I think we're a little more business savvy at this point where I can recover, but I'm still definitely wasting money in places out of learning.
And then as far as video parts go, that's what people remember you for. I mean, Dare to Air is one of those videos that is burnt into everyone's brain, and that really burnt your name into everyone's brain. But over your career, you've had a lot of video parts, and is there one that you personally like the most?
I like the Mad Beef section. I think at that point there was a lot of frustration going on, and I think I kind of went nuts during that session.
Frustration in terms of just life?
There was a lot of pressure, you know. I was getting pressures from every end, every angle in my life. There was mad pressure, whether it was personal or, you know, the expectations that were all of a sudden expected out of my name and my brand.
I would think anytime you show up at a skate park or anywhere, you are expected to do something crazy, and they don't realize that it might not be your day. You might be sick. You might have had the flu, and they still want to see something big.
Yeah, there was never an excuse, right? And those pressures really started to weigh on me. I started rollerblading because I loved it, not because this wasn't like you grow up as a kid right now, you go play football, and there's a whole career. You're kind of aiming at a career, you know? There was no career in rollerblading. I was one of the first people to ever put a pair of skates on at Escondido, you know, and I fell in love with the skate, and no one else did at that point. We created the love for the sport.
You created the sport.
We kind of did.
You are what made it cool. I mean, you earned every penny that you made then, but you have all these expectations on you, and then you're going through a divorce at 20 years old. When you get through that divorce, does life get totally crazy in terms of you have freedom and you're going to do a lot of stuff?
No, it doesn't, because then I feel like I've like let God down, and now I'm like going to go to hell, and now I'm battling the dogmatic like upbringing, so my brain starts to go crazy, bro. And then I'm still trying to hold on to my career and find myself and keep myself from eternal damnation, you know? You know, I'm devastated, but now just blown it in the eyes of God, and my opportunity to build my perfect life out has now just been demolished, and now I'm slightly lost at the time. And then I end up total idiot and getting married again right away.
And how does that happen? Did you need to have a girlfriend at all times?
I don't know what it was, man. I don't know. It was, I think I needed somebody, you know. I felt that I had lost my parents were gone. They were alive, but at this point they were, zombies. I had my brother and my sister to worry about and look out for, which I did. And my younger brother, my younger sister, I would always look out for them the best I can, helping them with school clothes, making sure everyone's eating, It kind of became like the parent at a way too young an age. And then just had this weird desire to have someone to love, you know?
Yeah.
Felt like a loving feeling had been stripped from me with my parents losing their brains. I've went from one marriage to another. I'm crazy. I'm on my fourth marriage right now, bro.
Do you have kids in all of your marriages?
I had kids in all my marriages except for the second one, which was shortly lived. It was like I got married, we ran to Vegas, got married, and a year later I was off doing the birth tour. And then she didn't want to go with me, so I said, all right, see ya.
You got divorced because she was just like, hey, I'm not down with being by your side.
Like, I'm not gonna go drive around the country in an RV. I was like, well, I am. I need to. Like, the sport needs me right now. I have to go out there. Like, I could tell, like, you know, we were losing some of our momentum come 98, you know? And I was like, man, I got to get out there and grassroots the hell out of this thing in order to keep us moving and get us into the new millennium, you know? In my brain, I was like, if only I could get it to the new millennium, then we'll have made it.
So that's your second marriage, and
yeah,
it doesn't last long because she doesn't want to be by your side in an RV going across the country building a sport that maybe she doesn't do. She does. Who cares really about that?
Right.
When you end the relationship because of that, do you get another girlfriend right away that's going to be by your side in the van?
Yeah, I'm done.
Well, it just seems like that's something with you is you always have to have someone by your side just based on what I'm hearing.
I think that I had like a crazy expectation of that I would, you know, get this woman who would just love and believe in me and what I was doing and would have my back and be by my side, but it never quite worked out that way. I have my wife now who's by my side and we've created something together and we're moving. I think that like the thing that I was looking for, I've finally have located, but I think that, you know, my first marriage, man, it was a weird marriage. She'd love to spend all that money that was coming in. And, you know, I'm making like a ton of cash. I'm trying to start birth in these companies and she's just riddling through my finances. I would leave, I'd come back, like my bank account's drained. I was like, how is this happening? And there was no respect and there just wasn't much love there. I didn't really feel the love, you know?
Yeah.
We had Elijah and then we fought all the time. And I was just like, man, this just is no kind of life for this kid to be in. And I need my money to help grow my sport. Like, I can't just be giving it away to diamonds.
So you have another marriage and that one, same thing, but you finally found your match and that's good. But I'm going to get away from relationships. We really didn't talk much about videos. We're really not going to talk about contests, but we will talk about you being known for big stunts. And pre-98, I'd say a shitload of them were on the street. And then you ended up breaking both your arms. You clip a knee in a gap of death. And that looks like a turning point in your career. Does that fall have an impact on the rest of your skating career?
No, I think my tenacity was there, but I'm starting to get older. And I'm starting to move into my mid to late 20s, which in rollerblading is getting older. The younger guys are coming up like madmen, and you know they're combining the kaboom that I was known for with the finesse and tech of Arlo, and they became like a morph of the two of us, where I don't think either of us could keep up because it was like they were out finessing Arlo, and then they were boosting with me, and then they were combining our two skills, I think, and created what is modern day rollerblading at this point. You know? Yeah. You got Dustin Latimer who came in and was just like, there's some Edwards, there's some Arlo, here's some Latimer. Like, holy crap. Those boys were rising to the occasion. And yeah, breaking my arms set me back. The first time I ever like broke some junk. But I mean, at that point, I was kind of over all the hype, man. I never like, it was almost like it became too much of a job, you know? I was over all the hype. I was really looking forward just to getting in my RV and going skating with some kids. Even though you might have been over the hype, it seems like you had a really great face of putting on the I'm stoked to be here. I want you guys to have a great time. You were great at that. You were the Glenn Plake of rollerblading in that respect. At that point, I didn't care about my personal achievements. I think I was content with the achievements that I have already been blessed with, and it was time to give back. Giving back something that you have done throughout your whole career, and almost to a fault, but it helped build something. But, you know, in talking about the injuries, I'm sure you've had a ton. I'm sure you've had a lot of concussions. I know you did a knee. Have you done anything else really bad that I don't know about? No, man, believe it or not, dude, as crazy as I was, sorry, I'm like really enjoying this Reese's peanut butter blizzard. I didn't really get too beat up. I mean, I blew out my knee. But all things considered, I think you look back at some of the crazy crap I did.
It's amazing you weren't hurt worse.
Yeah, I think that God really did have his 7 angels on me. And I think that probably at that point, I'd lost a little bit of sight of God and my purpose outside of knowing that I needed to just give back. But I still was struggling with trying to come to grips with God and figuring out why things were so crazy and why I couldn't get my crap together. So I just, drove around the country and, I think that I really discovered what I needed to do and who I wanted to be through that. And then afterwards, it all started kind of trying to find itself together.
So you're figuring out who you are at the turn of the millennium.
Yeah, right around then. Yeah, for sure.
For a lot of people, that's when the real careers start. It just so happens that yours started at 14. So you're finally maturing at that point.
Right. Like I'm like backwards.
It's like the Benjamin Buttons effect.
I have a huge appreciation for child stars, and I can understand why some of them can completely lose their brains. I mean, I think I didn't really lose my brains. I lost my money, but I didn't lose my brains.
When everybody's telling you you're the greatest at that young and an impressionable age, it is bound to mess you up unless you have grounded parents at home, and it didn't sound like you had that.
But in a strange way, I did, because I was Bible beat to death, and then I submerged myself into my understanding of Christ and the fundamental laws of humanity and the moral and ethical codes of life. I think I got more than the average bear.
Oh, yeah, you did. I mean, you lived a lifetime.
I had to test them and learn the hard way in a lot of things. But you know what? You don't learn when it's easy and you got it. So you got it.
Yeah.
You only learn when you don't got it, because that's the only time that you can actually learn, technically. Otherwise, you're not learning. You're just doing. At this point in my life, man, I just thought there's so much to learn.
So I am going to fast forward a little bit. We're going to say 2000 hits, where you think if it gets to 2000, rollerblading's made it. But unfortunately, that's almost the turn for the worse, maybe 2004 or 5. And in 2007, your career with Rollerblade, the brand, ends. And that's an eternity. I mean, there's nobody in skating that has been on a brand for longer than you and Rollerblade. But how does that end? Because
Rollerblade, the company, did all kinds of crazy shifts all right then. They went from Nordica to Benetton. I got lost in the shuffle there because contests became the main thing. And I wasn't personally overly achieving the podium and trying to achieve the podium.
No, you were the guy who was in between runs doing the best trick that anybody saw all day.
Yeah, that's kind of always been my style. I've never been a big contest guy. Like, I mean, I did half okay in the beginning just because people were still catching up. But as soon as, people started catching up, then runs were never my forte. I've always been a one-trick pony. But it'd be one sick trick.
Any spot you go to, you're getting a clip in the video because you're going to do the gnarliest thing there.
Yeah, or at least try.
Yeah. Eventually, the contest scene dies off, and rollerblading falls off a cliff like I don't think any sport's ever really seen. It's been 10 years since rollerblading has been out of the X Games. The numbers are pretty low. As the godfather, pretty much, of the sport, what do you think of the future of blading, and what are your thoughts on the sport? Are you bummed on it? I mean, I'm sure you're still stoked on the activity, but just the industry and where it's at now.
From my goggles, it looks like we did it. Our objective was to become international and to develop a real skater-owned, skater-run, skater-influenced industry. And what's fallen off is the big corporate shebang and shenanigans that were once Rollerblade. And then what's left is maybe cookie crumbs, but it's a solid set of cookie crumbs, I think, prepping itself to make one hell of a cookie.
Do you see a gap in like the kids with seeing competitions? Because that's the one thing that rollerblading doesn't have is a feeder system into the X Games where there looks like there can be actually a career path, where I know people don't do these sports because there's a career path. But at some point, the best I mean, we want to see Alex Broscow get paid, but he can't get paid right now because there is no professional skaters that can make a living other than Haffey. There's some pieces left, but I don't think enough to really leave it in a healthy spot.
I think, though, that the pieces that are left are healthier than clearly the pieces that started. I've already seen it pre-contest and that, feeder system and seen the capability. I don't think that all hope is lost. I think, if anything, we're primed and set. I mean, I still have a love and a passion for it, and I wish that financially I could be involved and that I could be involved more, but it doesn't mean that I'm not aiming for it. So I don't know what's to be of it, but I don't think that it's going anywhere. There's enough love and devotion, I think, to it internationally. It's just super underground. Look at skateboarding and look at BMX, how long they traveled underground.
You can say that rollerblading helped put them back underground when it started blowing up because there was a lot of focus on that, and then everything shifted where rollerblading has been pushed down. And to tell you the truth, BMX and skateboarding have problems too, because if you go to a skate park, you're going to see 40 scooters, 4 skateboarders, 2 bikers, and maybe a rollerblader.
Right. It is. But I think that these sports inherently are probably forever going to be more of a rebel yell than an organized thing.
Oh, for sure. It's a different kind of person that likes these sports. It's not the team is going to win and we're going to run through a brick wall. It's what can I do? And it's all about yourself.
It kind of is. And I think the industry's got to find a way to organize itself. I don't know. I got really disappointed because, I did the birth tour and then I did the diversity tour. My objective for the diversity tour was to get everybody involved. I had a vision and a dream of every company being involved in the series, but the corporate America kept it, and the greed kept people from doing what was right. And so there was, Slim Jim is going to give us the money, and who cares that USD and Razors and Rems is forking out their little bit of money to get all the riders to you to have your Slim Jim contest. There was no one promoting the industry. Through all of that hype that we went through, nothing was really promoting the industry as an industry. It was just promoting rollerblading as a sport, kind of, you know what I mean? Just as a thing.
Everybody wanted to cash in.
And no one wanted to work with one another, I don't think.
No one wanted to work with one another. Everybody was looking at it as money in their pocket. And there was one man in the world who was saying, I'm not in it for the greed. I'm going to give you all the money I have to build this sport. And that was you. And unfortunately, you didn't have major brand support to do that. Because if you did, it could have been much stronger in the 2000s. But I hear what you're saying, where everybody was looking at it as a business and how can we leverage rollerblading into dollars.
Yeah, it was. So what are you going to do?
At this point, I want to do something that I call inappropriate questions. I have a guest come on and ask 3 inappropriate questions to you.
Okay.
The person I have this week, he's Arlo Eisenberg. I know you know Arlo well.
Awesome.
I'm going to bring on the most listened to guest in the history of the PAL Movement podcast, Arlo Eisenberg. Arlo, I don't know if you have questions ready or if we need to take a minute. You let me know.
I do have some questions ready. Do we just go right into them?
You can go right into your first inappropriate question.
Okay, and I hope that I've got the spirit of these things right. So Chris Edwards, in the early days, in addition to coming up with a lot of tricks, he also had to name them. So we ended up with a lot of tricks called camel toe and ass wipe and even the long dick air, which had to be corrected to make it more family friendly to just call the LD air. Chris had a very sort of lowbrow, juvenile bent to the way he wanted to name these things. So what I'd like to ask Chris is if he had to invent a trick name to summarize his sex life, what would it be?
I like the question. I also want to know how he feels about naming all of these things that tons of kids are using in conversation where the rest of the world is looking at them like, what the fuck are these people talking about? They're idiots. And really, it's just the vernacular of Chris Edwards and what comes out of his mind. So we will find out the trick for his sexual act as well as how he feels about creating a vocabulary that could be laughed at times, but he was just a kid.
I was just going to add, though, that he's also, now that he's got his whole own little brood of children, I wonder how he explains to them all these trick names or what he says when he's teaching them about the history of skating or even how to do the tricks themselves.
Well, question I'll ask him, but how many kids are in his brood? Do you know?
Good luck with that. That's sort of like always question number one when we play the rollerblading name game and sitting around having a drink. It's like, how many kids does Chris have? So I'd love to know the answer to that.
What do you think the over-under is?
I'd put the over-under at 7.
Whoa. Okay, so this is going to be a fun question there.
And I would take the over on that, honestly. I would feel pretty confident about taking the over, but it's around 7 is what I'd put the over-under at.
Wow. All right, well, I'm going to take the under on this one.
Okay.
We have a bet, and it'll be for some 10-barrel beer. If I win, I just want 1 drug receipt.
If you win, you want art. If I win, I get beer? Okay, I'll send you a drug receipt if you win. If Chris has less than 7 kids, you get a drug receipt.
And I will send you a arrangement of 10-barrel beer if you win.
What is?
It's a sponsor of my show.
Sounds great. I can't wait.
All right, Chris. So there's inappropriate question number 1. The first part, what would be the trick name to describe your sexual prowess?
My wife said, shouldn't you be asking her that?
I would say I would, but this is to go off of the trick names that you named as a youngster and to see how it would transfer into your adulthood and what you would name a trick now to describe what you can do behind closed doors.
It'd probably be like the Savage Throwdown.
The Savage Throwdown sounds comfortable.
It's very comfortable. My wife loves it. I'm like, baby, you ready for the Savage Throwdown? We're doing this now.
The second part of that question was, how do you feel about some of the trick names now looking back? And some of the names are kind of funny. I mean, they're just weird in general when you're naming them, but do you wish you would have named them different things? Do you laugh about that? Do you even think about it?
No, I would never name them differently. They're the most brilliant names ever created.
All right, from the mind of Chris Edwards.
I think they're hilarious, and they're very fitting because it was really the Melvin. It wasn't the asswipe. That wasn't ever. I never named anything asswipe.
Okay.
That's too obvious. So Melvin is probably what he's considering the asswipe. That's because Jess Downforth let me know that, the frontal we already know is a camel toe, but the rear tuck is in England apparently a Melvin. So that was the Melvin, because then if you're doing your heels and you're sliding your heels, then you're doing a Melvin. If you're sliding your toes in the forward position, then you're camel toeing. A Melvin was a wedgie. So they were very fitting at the time. And then if you look at the LD Air, then you'll probably laugh even harder when you realize that my one leg's going over the top of my other, and that the one it sticks out straight as an arrow on that trick. So that's pretty funny.
Yeah, no, it's definitely funny.
And it's also kind of, it's always fun to play and make up secret things. So we never actually called it. See, Arlo knows that it was called the Long Dick Air, but never in print did it come out as the Long Dick Air. It was LD Air.
So it was kind of the inside joke between the pros.
Yeah, and that makes it funny.
So do you ever have to explain these to the kids?
Not so much, you just let it roll. Like, all right, listen, I'm gonna teach you how to do a camel toe slide. You don't like go into detail. You just do the camel toe slide. And then this is the Melvin, no problem. And this is one of your dad's favorite grabs. This is the great LD Air.
Easy enough. Now it's question 2.
Clearly, Team Rollerblade was co-ed. They had all the girl dancers. They had the guys. All their routines were choreographed. They worked together, and Chris was part of the choreography. So basically, all these guys spent a lot of time traveling and doing demos and getting all sweaty together. And I just want Chris to spill the beans. Was there a lot of sleeping around on those early Team Rollerblade days? And who was he sleeping with?
I like that question. He would have been the young buck in that whole crew. And
exactly.
Yeah, it would have been a learning experience for a religious kid, son of a pastor, stepping into the crazy wild world of rollerblading at that point.
Yeah.
All right, Chris, spill the beans on what happened with Team Rollerblade.
I was under the age of 21, so they would all go out and about, and I'd be in my hotel room and calling my wife Ida and wandering around a hotel room. My Savage Throwdown was not happening at that point. Although I'm sure Arlo will be very disappointed in that. Sorry.
So the Savage had not been developed yet. It was years in the making, and we will go with question number 3.
So I saved the lamest question for last, and just because basically I guess I was running out of material, but talking about those earliest days, you asked what the most dangerous thing Chris did for a check was. I'm curious what the most embarrassing thing that he did was. What was the worst thing that he had to wear in service of a Team Rollerblade routine? And I'm looking for like sequins, spandex, the whole gamut. Early Team Rollerblade had a real distinct look. And so I know he must have had some pretty terrible stuff that he had to wear.
All right, good question. And I will want to know what is the dumbest thing you had to wear. I would guess if people gave you dumb things to wear, you would say no and give them the finger. At least that's what I would like to believe. But did you ever wear something stupid for money?
Yeah, actually, kind of. I mean, nothing too stupid, I don't think. In fact, I don't even know if this is stupid. I was cast in a Pepsi commercial that aired during the Super Bowl. But for some reason, the director's vision was I would be in all silver. So they spray painted pants silver and gave me a silver shirt or something. I don't even remember exactly. Maybe they put silver hair mousse in my hair. I don't remember how far it went, but there was something about the silver theme, and I was silvered out.
Yeah, that's not that bad.
It wasn't that bad.
So, Chris, did you ever have to sell out completely and wear something you totally didn't want to wear, and what was it?
Yeah, that's what I said at the beginning of our interview. When I first got involved, I wore spandex and was on the cover of the Blade Runner box. And after that was the first and last time I wore spandex for a rollerblade and sold myself out like that.
So that was just a one-time deal.
After that, I don't remember getting captured in anything else. I mean, there was some ugly rollerblade gear that when they did the rollerblade gear stuff, but it was shorts, ugly shorts, but not spandex.
Cool, man. Well, that's Inappropriate Questions, and I want to thank you for your time.
You guys put some crazy bet on the amount of...
I'll play you the last part of that real quick. All right, man. Well, I will talk to you once I win the bet, because I think you have 7 or more. I've got 7 or less.
Well, I tell you what, I've opened up his Facebook since we've been talking, and I'm looking at his profile pic, and I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 kids right there in the profile pic to start with. And I know that he's got other kids from other wives that probably aren't in this picture. So I'm feeling pretty good about this beer.
When we say Chris Edwards kids, I say they have to be spawned by Chris Edwards. He couldn't have married into a relationship with others.
You're right. These are biological kids. That is one of the stipulations of the bet. So you might still be in the game.
Yeah, because that just ended everything right there. But she could have married into a couple. Who knows?
It's possible. Wow,
that's a lot of mouths to feed. That would be so much money. It would be ridiculous.
No kidding. My one kid is expensive enough. I don't know how they do it.
Insane. All right, so that was the end of that. So I think based on our conversation, I found out that you only have, it's 4 biological children?
6.
6 biological children. I'm a winner. Man.
6. And 2 are my wife.
Okay.
We have 8 that I've been raising since they were little.
That is incredibly amazing, expensive, scary, time-consuming. I could go on and on and on.
And I really was not too crazy of a promiscuous guy. I've been married my whole damn life.
So they're all within wedlock.
I've had my moments, but I haven't been as promiscuous, I think, as maybe you would assume. Or my ex-wives assume. Maybe that's why they're my ex-wives.
Could be.
Just saying.
Well, Chris, I thank you for your time. Your career has been one that has really defined the sport, and it's not like rollerblading takes care of their legends, because if they did, you would still be in the spotlight. But the sport's struggling to kind of figure its own identity out right now. But the one shining thing that you can look through in rollerblading for 25 years has been Chris Edwards. And given there was things that were going on behind the curtain that no one saw, but your career helped define a sport, change a lot of lives for the better. And I want to thank you for your time, man.
No problem. I appreciate it, man. It's been an honor to be on the path that God put me on. Forever will have a love and a passion for rollerblading and all the friends that I've made along the way and continue to have. And there's not a day that goes by I don't hope and pray that we get a nice solid rebound here as we discover ourselves.
I hope the same thing. I also hope you get a vasectomy, because I think now might be the time for one of those, unless you're trying to field a football team.
Yeah, I guess it's time.
That was time with Chris Edwards, and what a career he had. The stunts that guy did motivated a generation of kids to roll on 8 wheels. While he's out of the scene today, he will never really be out of it, because there is one name that will not be forgotten in rollerblading, and that is Chris Edwards. Next week, it's back to business, and we'll talk to Karma Vella, the co-founder of Polar, a brand that took the outdoor market by storm over the past decade. And as of 2 years ago, Karma left Polar, and the rumor is that his NDA has run out, and the goal of the show will be to find out what happened and what's next. Until then, tell your friends about the show, review me on iTunes or whatever platform you listen to me on. I want to thank you for listening to the show and thank my great sponsors, Evo, Rescue Water, and the 10 Barrel Brewery for making this show happen. Have a great week, everyone.